Hi everyone, my name is Mala and I'm the Director of Tech for Social Good on the GitHub Social Impact team. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about two topics in artificial intelligence, or AI for short, that have dominated tech news recently: generative AI tools and natural language processing models. I'll talk about these as relevant to nonprofits and the greater social sector. Alright, before we get started, I do have a few disclaimers. First, the opinions expressed in this video are strictly my personal views, not that of GitHub, Microsoft, or any of my future employers. Second, some of you may know me for the research I do in social sector tech, but keep in mind these ideas are not based on extensive research. And third, in no way should this video be misconstrued as product, investment, or programmatic advice. Please carefully consider which tools you or your organization should use and how. Alright, so what are generative AI tools and NLP models? So one way to understand the significance of generative AI is to briefly look at the history of how online search engines index and organize information. So this is the homepage of Yahoo as it appeared on October 17, 1996, courtesy of Web Archive. In these much earlier days of the internet, most information cataloging was manual. Humans at Yahoo created a taxonomy, meaning a hierarchical ordering of topics, and then placed links to different web pages within these topics. Now, while there was a search bar at the top, in 1996, Yahoo and other search engines were limited to basically matching keywords. So if you were a student in 1996 and you needed to look up the word canonical, your search engines wouldn't know if you needed the computer science, math, or religious studies meaning. That's why so much of the Yahoo homepage was dedicated to these topics, because often people had to manually search for what they needed. 4 years later, Google had come along with its algorithmic-based approach to searching the internet, and you can see this homepage here from October 17, 2000, again courtesy of Web Archive. Google mainstreamed the idea of accounting for a multitude of parameters like location, age, gender, search history, and trending topics. It also introduced to the masses the idea that a search engine can learn as more searches are performed, more data is gathered, and more information is understood. As we all know, these changes affected basically every part of the internet and the digital economy. So while Google revolutionized how we search for, organize, and even visualize information that humans create, as the name implies, generative AI tools use artificial intelligence to generate new information. And that's why a lot of people are arguing that we are at an equally, if not bigger, inflection point in online information. Within a few years, some say that more information that exists online will be generated by these tools than by humans. So it's important to note that generative AI tools are not limited to text. Some can generate video, audio, or pictures. GitHub user Steven2358 has a public open source repository that, among other things, lists generative AI tools, models, and milestones. The second AI topic that has gotten a lot of media attention lately is natural language processing models, or NLP models for short. NLP is also what it sounds like. It uses artificial intelligence to help computers process text and spoken words to create responses that mimic humans. OpenAI's GPT-3 is the NLP model used in the popular generative AI tool ChatGPT. So again, GPT-3 is the natural language processing model, and ChatGPT is the generative AI tool. Like generative AI, the concept NLP is not new. What is relatively new is aspects of the GPT-3 model, like neural network architecture, which make it more sophisticated than other NLP models. GPT can retain what was previously said in a conversation, keep responses in a consistent tone, understand sentiment, and even improve responses with feedback. And as my colleague Peter, who works on AI policy in GitHub, pointed out, GPT-3 also had the emergent property that it could code. So in simple terms, GPT-3 taught itself to code. This is relevant to the GitHub tool Copilot, which I'll talk about later. For the social sector, one important thing to keep in mind is that there are multiple NLP models. The Bloom NLP model, for example, was trained in 46 different written languages. Related, Meta also has created machine translating models and tools for more than 200 spoken languages, many of which do not have their own written alphabets. So if GPT-3, which is trained on English, could learn to code, it'll be interesting to see what emergent properties, like translation capabilities, could come out of a multi-language NLP model. Alright, so how might the social sector use generative AI and NLP models? So many social sector organizations have been using AI in their work for years, so rather than focusing on specific projects, I'm going to talk about 3 broad ways generative AI tools and NLP models might be used. One of the areas is applying NLP models to specific challenges or disciplines within the social sector. Say, for example, we were able to take an instance of a software tool that runs the GPT-3 or Bloom NLP and train it on every publicly available paper, model, and study, about epidemiology in sub-Saharan Africa. In theory, this could become an interactive knowledge bank that can answer questions for field practitioners implementing public health programs for disease monitoring, prevention, and response in under-resourced areas. A generative AI tool like ChatGPT used in this instance could do things like quickly explain why data points are grouped together in a cluster mapping. It could also analyze and help an epidemiologist understand which disease prevention methods met the targeted desired outcomes, or what environmental or human behavioral factors were the most significant in the spread of a disease in a certain area. For monitoring the spread of coronaviruses and other animal to human pathogens, many of which are undiscovered, this could save precious time. The second way that generative AI tools and NLP models could be used in the social sector is to find and use code with an ease and at a scale that's never before been possible. Now, while the social sector is highly innovative in a lot of ways, this is often not the case when it comes to digital technology. One reason is because most people working in the social sector don't read or write code files in any programming language, and most code doesn't have what's called a graphical user interface, or GUI for short, which allows someone to perform a function without directly interacting with the code. So if you use an app on your phone to order food to your apartment, you have used a GUI to interact with software, but most software doesn't have a GUI, so it's inaccessible to most social sector organizations. This is why so many social sector organizations can turn their innovative analog solutions into a software solution. In our research at GitHub, we found that with few exceptions, social sector organizations that are of a similar size to non-social sector companies are less likely to have tech teams that can read and write code, and they're less likely to let tech teams make procurement decisions. This often creates a cycle where custom-coded solutions are deprioritized and underfunded. Now, going back, you may have noticed that while algorithmic search engines revolutionized how people find text, pictures, and video, ironically, it didn't revolutionize how people find code, because code is not indexed in the same way. So for decades, not only have most social sector organizations not been able to use most code, they can't even find most code. Generative AI tools and new NLP models could change that. So GitHub hosts more code than any other platform in the world, and Copilot is a generative AI tool. Copilot uses OpenAI's AI model and is trained on billions of lines of code publicly hosted on GitHub. Already, Copilot has dramatically changed how code can be discovered and used, and many software developers have praised the tool for making software development more efficient and consistent. So there are multiple ways to use Copilot. Here on the Copilot homepage, a software developer types the natural language prompt, determine whether the sentiment of text is positive, et voila. Copilot suggests code to do exactly that. So already the barriers to finding and writing code have been lowered. Now there's obviously still much more that can be done to make code more accessible to non-software developers, and whether it's with Copilot or another tool in the coming years, we will almost certainly have new ways of using natural language to understand what a piece of code does and how to use it. This is huge for the social sector. Generative AI tools coupled with NLP models could help people who don't read and write code create a much more sophisticated online solution, like building and maintaining websites, creating more customized surveys or forms, creating Python data visualizations, or even building entire software packages specific to social sector needs. At a talk I gave in Stockholm in 2018, I spoke about a challenge that designers working in the social sector face, and that's creating culturally appropriate digital visual assets. Because so much digital design is driven by companies in North America and Europe, modern westernized flat design dominates the user interfaces of apps, websites, and other software packages. And this is problematic for people who have not been exposed to environments that inspire these types of design. The example I gave is Instagram icons that don't make sense for someone who's never been to a big city, and has only ever seen, for example, Bedouin architecture in Mali, or colorful local markets in Thailand, India, or Nigeria. While most social sector organizations that work in multiple countries and contexts would love to create culturally localized assets, the cost of creating multiple sets of original graphics, UI kits, and design systems can be prohibitively expensive. Generative AI tools for pictures could be one way to address this issue. Using OpenAI's DALL-E in minutes, I created these icons based on Bedouin architecture and Thai night markets. Now granted, they're not good enough yet to use in an app, but with a refined prompt, more culturally specific inputs, and a graphic designer to build off the design, generative AI picture tools may soon allow the social sector to create visual assets appropriate for different contexts at a more affordable price. Alright, now that we've covered a few ways generative AI tools and NLP models might be used for social good, I'd be remiss to not quickly cover some of the ethical considerations that the social sector will face. First, there's this principle called garbage in, garbage out, meaning if you train an AI tool or an NLP model on bad information, it will produce bad information. Now, this is also true for information that's inherently racist, homophobic, sexist, or otherwise bigoted. While OpenAI is actively working to combat discriminatory information, there's a real opportunity for the social sector to lead this work, given so many organizations organizations work with globally marginalized and underrepresented populations. Third, the prevalence of NLPs that are only trained on English will increase the information gap between English and other languages, particularly indigenous languages. However, there are opportunities to use GPT-3 to bridge the gap with lower socioeconomic English-speaking populations and to use multi-language NLPs to reach non-English-speaking populations. Lastly, the computing power to create NLP models is enormous, so enormous that only a handful of companies can meaningfully try. Conversations around the environmental toll and further centralization of tech power will become more prevalent in coming years. There are a ton of great books about ethical AI. A good place to find them is on this Goodreads list. Lastly, remember that in any tech for social good topic, tech tools are just that. Tools. There is no substitute for expert knowledge, inclusivity, context building, fair and transparent policies, and of course, common sense. Alright, well that's all from me. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you heard, please subscribe to my channels for more videos about tech for social good. Bye!